So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzailik lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we find then these layers very true, coming from Leviticus the 23rd chapter, where you'll find then the spring feast and then the autumn feast. He sets the stage of every year of history of the Hebrew people maintaining those holy feasts, and they did for more than 1,000 years until the Messiah, the Savior, Yahweh Yeshua, then came and he completed the spring feast. Only have in mind the Leviticus the 23rd chapter also has the autumn feast, the second half of the Torah and the prophets, where it's not yet completed. Those people who discards the holy law of Moses on behalf of their own Christian ways, then they are sadly mistaken, because the instructions were not completed yet. Only half of it was. So then, because of this, you find then during these times of transitions, let's then evaluate what's going on in the world and explaining then what takes place with the United States, trying then to drag the world once again into war. And they are very concerned of not using the word war, but it is war. Besides these, what does it take for us to understand the place or then the residency of Nahashatan or Satan in this planet? As we understand, during the time of deceit from 1009 to 2009 was 1,000 years of deceit, subdivided in a couple of sections. 800 years was given then to Great Britain, and then a couple of hundred years was given to America. U.S. is trying to extend the time of deceit. Ended in 09. As we understand, we are during the time of the restoration of the holy cities, where the Gentiles were then granted a place regarding this restoration period. However, China, the Soviet Union, and Africa, these are the main players of this restoration period. Let's make this very clear. China, the Soviet Union, and Africa are the only players and designers of this time of the restoration period. The other countries, they have no part in it. There is an understanding of linkage of systems related with China. That's where U.S. then later on, they receive great wealth from the system prior of retrieving their ships and their military from the world. So then, as far as we can understand of the United States, the tide of information then and the forward motion is then changing. The economy of U.S. is not improving. As they pushed for more war, then they tried to manipulate the stock market, as they did many times. They tried to change the situation as far as jobs market in U.S. increasing. It's not true. The economy of U.S. is not going anywhere. In fact, it's going down. And because of these, then many straightforward countries, for instance Australia, a very responsible country, and unfortunately the previous government, they lied, they cheated, they stole money from the nation. And at this time, where nations are trying to organize themselves and come up with some sort of economical plan for the future, Then U.S. springs back again, another situation where they went to war. Let's evaluate what went on during the time of the 9/11 situation more than 10 years ago. What was then the purpose or the objective of then the damage done in the Pentagon? The U.S. has told us that an airplane went down, and they are plain liars, plain blunt, scoundrelous liars. This is what they are. First, there was no airplane. They couldn't find it. They wanted a reason to erase the financial department of Pentagon with a bomb. This is what they did. Because U.S. wanted to go to war because the economy was not going anywhere. And they went to war. And then, at this time, with some beheadings of those people, those journalists and aid workers, U.S. found another reason to go to war again. And other countries trying to adjust their economies then went straight forward. They got themselves mixed with these liars and scoundrels. U.S. has murdered its own president. President John was murdered by the military of the United States. So then, as far as the library over there in Alice, in the destruction of the president with a shot in the head, it is incredible how people, they don't investigate, and then the murder of the president of the United States was found in a drain hole, in the manhole near the drain storm, the inlet of the path over there where people then was walking. So then, it is amazing how many people, when they watch the library, and then unfortunately then the gentleman over there, they had absolutely no part in it, Oswald, and he didn't do anything. He was not the murderer, and he ended up paying for it. Now, Australia, for instance, is thinking 100% that the U.S. is then acting as a gentleman. Now they should think again. They are not. They are acting as the same scoundrels as 10 years ago. You don't go to war because only a few people lost their heads. If these leaders, they were in the military before, and most of them did not, you don't start a war because some people lost their heads. First, you evaluate the economy. During the Second World War, there was a person from North Dakota, and he was absolutely against the war, but then inevitably U.S. ended up going to war because of Pearl Harbor. The first consideration when there is a war, can the economy handle it? Now U.S. is thinking on not printing out as much money as before. So what they have in mind is those nations dealing with USD, they're going to pay more for every time they exchange. There is always a give and take. But truly what is concerning is then when nations, they observe a certain situation and they think they are doing this on behalf of humanity. That's an absolutely pure crap. The United States has murdered its own president because he refused to go against Cuba. There was an order, the President John should murder Mr. Castro. And President John said no. There are other ways of dealing with the problem. Then the entire country was against John, and he was murdered from a military person handling a rifle on the inlet of a rainstorm. Amazingly, you find in Australia, you find Turkey, many other countries joining up arms with the United States to try to fight these people over there, these Islamic people. They have doing this, and they are doing this for centuries. What about Rwanda in '94? There are many people who died over there, and they were not very concerned with it. So what is the distinction then for Islamic people murdering Islamic people versus Africans murdering Africans? Are they not both human beings? Why was then so much emphasis placed on the Islamic people and not so much on the African people? Maybe US is trying to say the Africans are not very valuable versus the Islamic people are very valuable. Rwanda was a scandal. Thousands of Africans, they died. And the US did not lift a finger. So then, was it not the beheading of a few of these people, all because we have to act on behalf of the civilized world? What about the Africans in Rwanda in '94? Were they not destroying each other? What the US saw in the Islamic State was simply a few people being beheaded. A situation as if a person goes to the supermarket and buying bread. That's how non-relevant the situation is for those who are living in Islamic states. That's how they deal with scoundrels. Now, was there not very many decent Africans in Rwanda in '94? They were being murdered, and the US did not lift a finger. Now, what is strange is France, for instance, Australia, Turkey, they are so humanized, scoundrelly humanized, because of some of those people were beheaded. Now they are concerned they're going to join up against others. It's going to be war for many years. Precisely what the US wanted. And you can be sure of it, US does not give a crap for those people that died. So then, how can we go forward with so many people lying, cheating? The question is, the nations involved with these scoundrelous wars, can they recuperate later from their economies? For instance, Brazil is bankrupt. The nation is done away with. They used to have, some 40 years ago, 7.5% growth per year. We are down to a fraction. It was 0.48 and lower down another 0.18. How's it going to be the economy of Australia, for instance? They came out from a government they were stealing. Now they are joined up, and now you watch these politicians and these presidents so dignified because they are concerned with beheadings of people. They don't give a crap. Let's be very honest. Where was Turkey, France, Australia when the Rwanda problem was going on in '94? And thousands of Africans, they lost their lives. Now you're going to say that they are humanized and gentlemen because of few people were beheaded from the Islamic people? Obama is trying to do the best he can, but he was not a military man. He does not have a military background. In fact, he's not even an American. He was able to get in the presidency because of lies and cheats, and he does not have a valid birth certificate. So thinking himself as a gentleman, he's not. He's a liar and a scoundrel to start with. Now, he's trying to do the best he can. However, he's not taking the responsibility for what the nation did to President John. He's not taking the responsibility for what they did in the prison in Cuba. He's not taking the responsibility of the Gulf War. In fact, he's not taking responsibility for anybody. But other nations are thinking he's acting as a gentleman. So then, as far as the Soviet Union returning very strongly, there is a very important fact of the Northern Kingdom stated by Daniel the 11th chapter, providing arms for Egypt. That's where the balance of power must be at. Because U.S. has simply deceived thousands of people and nations, and they are wasting important resources on behalf of a conflict there won't be any end. This war is for years and years and years and years. Now then, since we are then testifying of a second Vietnam, let's then evaluate the situation from the Northern Kingdom's perspective. From reading the Holy Instructions, we find verse 1-4. And later, he shall come with a great army and much equipment. Explaining of the Soviet Union at the end, coming with a great army and much equipment. Prior of these, you find then Egypt, in verse 8, giving arms to Egypt so then Egypt can do its share. Then the balance of power is then restored, because U.S. is not understanding the momentum. They want the world being led as if you were then observing the statue of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, the head of gold. Obama, he thinks he's the head of gold of his time. But the problem is we are not observing at the head, we are at the base of the statue, where iron does not mix with the clay. And there is not a leading power in the base of the statue. You find iron mixed with the clay. And the Kingdom of the North, the Soviet Union, Kingdom of the East, China, and Kingdom of the South, Africa, these are the main players of this time of the Restoration period. Started in 09. It goes until the end. So then, what can we understand as far as then the retrieving of the ships? How is then U.S. going to retrieve its ships? Some people say, boy, this is crazy. U.S. is in many parts of the world and won't ever bring their ships back to their home. Oh yes, they will. By reading the Holy Instructions, what do we find then? Great wealth on the 28th verse of the 11th chapter. Obviously, you have to have some sort of a system going, because as we read, Daniel, he was then the tradesperson of his time under many kings, and he was then the chief trader of his time. And when he said knowledge would increase, was for the purposes of trade, because he was not speaking of tabernacling, he was speaking of the Gentile level. So he knew that knowledge would increase for the purposes of trade. Thus the computer provides a way for you to invest, to send money, receive money, and do the trade in your computer. Because of this factor, a linkage of the Chinese system, we understand Alibaba is the top most important system in the United States. It is the most profitable. Said many times before, the Chinese system is coming, the Chinese system is coming, the Chinese system is coming. And it did, within the period of time that it was said. Now the system is already available, only lacks the icon of investment. And that's where then US is going to get caught. Because when the icon of investment comes, is the signal for US to retrieve. Then you find very precisely, then great wealth. Prior of the retrieval, then the USD shall be linked with many other monetary systems of this world online instantly. And a lot of them are virtual monetary systems not linked with central banks. Then the icon of investment comes up, and then people of the world realize, what can they invest in the US? Nothing. There is nothing to invest in the country of US other than war and destruction. And they are going to turn to China, because China is the factory of this world. So then, how should we then understand these nations think they are doing a great favor for humanity? They are simply clowns. Simply clowns. They don't understand of what they are doing is absolutely deadly. They are prolonging a period of time already non-existing. Some say, but some people don't have the same opinion as yours. Let's go back to Rwanda. Where was then the situation regarding other countries helping Rwanda? What the United States has shown us is then Africans are not so important as the Middle Eastern people. Do they have any understanding how many people were hacked into pieces? With big knives they have chopped down arms and legs and heads and ears. They have gunned down people, families, pregnant women, you name it. Here they were left to rot. Now because of a few journalists that were beheaded, then US, he wants to become the hero of the moment. That's why US is no longer part of the leadership of the world, but China, Soviet Union, and Africa. These are the main players. So let these players understand their positions and take on the leadership thereof. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.